So you wanna be a master of
King EMON.
Do you have the skills to be #1?
Card D Kaizoku.
It's my last deck list before the English release of OP02, so I have to do King EMON. He was one of the most popular leaders in the Asia meta aside from Zoro. It's basically a kid deck but with some shiny new toys. If you liked playing kid in OP01, you'll feel right at home with King EMON. I actually got a lot of practice with kid off camera in set 1, so I'd say this is one of my most comfortable decks to pilot. First off, let's look at the leader. King EMON is a monocolor green leader with 5000 power and 5 starting life. His leader ability reads, Activate main, once per turn. When you have 1 or less characters in play, reduce the play cost of the next 3 cost or higher Wano Country type character card you play from your hand by 1 during this turn. This leader ability doesn't seem as apparently powerful as Kid's, but it's actually a lot stronger than it sounds. You're basically turbocharging your early game. If you're going second, you can play Okiku on your first turn. If you're going first, you can play Yamato, a 4 cost 6 power card, on your second turn, and you can potentially take something out with your leader after Yamato taps it. Establishing these threats early really puts you ahead and really helps to put you in control until you start playing all your big threats in the late game. Also, if you're going first, it's really useful to get your Odin out a turn early instead of on your 9 Dawn turn. Let's take a look at the rest of the deck. In order of cost, we have 4 OP01 Kozuki Momonosuke. 1 cost, 0 power, 1k counter. His card reads, Activate main. For 1 Dawn, you may rest this character. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Wano Country type card and add it to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. If you've played in OP01, you already know Momo. He was our quintessential searcher for our utility cards like Nekomamushi and Izo. His role pretty much remains the same in OP02, except his search targets are even more useful now. We can pull offensive threats like Yamato and Odin now. There's even a blocker option now through Toki. Which brings us to our next card. 4 OP02 Kozuki Toki. 1 cost, 0 power, 1k counter. Her card reads, If you have a Kozuki Odin character in play, this character gains blocker. We have 8 Odins in our deck since Yamato counts as Odin as well, so she'll have blocker active more often than not. But even when you don't, she only costs 1 anyway, so it's very easy to flex her into a turn if you need to. Being searchable by Momo really increases Momo's value too. Next we have 4 starter deck Capone Gang Bej. 1 cost, 1000 power, 0 counter. His card reads, Blocker. Another staple from OP01. Being a 1 cost blocker is really useful for protecting our big threats. He's easy to fit into any turn for later use and he's searchable by Bonney. Next is 4 OP01 Jewelry Bonney. 1 cost, 1000 power, 1k counter. Her card reads, Activate main. For 1 Dawn, you may rest this card. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Supernova type card and add it to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. She was one of the most important cards in OP01 and still remains as such. Momo shares more of the heavy lifting with Bonney now though, but she still helps us find a lot of the cards we need. She can search the remaining 10 other blockers in the deck, she can search for our other 2k counter, and she can search for our late game threats as well, and even punk Gibson if we need it. Next is 4 OP01 Killer. 2 cost, 2000 power, 1k counter. His card reads, Blocker. Dawn times 1, on block. If you have 3 or more characters, draw 1 card. Just another cheap blocker that can sometimes replace himself. This effect is actually quite useful in cases where you block 1 attack with him, then draw a 2k counter that you needed on his death that lets you block another attack in the same turn. It's a niche scenario, but it actually happens more often than you would think. Next is 4 starter deck Scratchman Apu. 2 cost, 2000 power, 2k counter. His card reads, Dawn times 1. When attacking, rest up to one of your opponent's Dawn cards. He's really only just a 2k counter that's searchable by Bonney. He gives us the flexibility of hitting a 2k counter whether we use Bonney or Momo for Izo. Next is 4 OP01 Izo. 3 cost, 3000 power, 2k counter. His card reads, On play, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 4 or less. He's our other 2k counter in the deck. I actually also use him offensively half of the time. He's a really flexible card and searchable by Momo. You can even bring him out with Odin and tap something before it attacks, or to set something up to be killed the turn after. Next is 4 OP01 Okiku. 3 cost, 5000 power, 0 counter. Her card reads, Dawn times 1, when attacking, once per turn. Rest up to one of your opponent's character with a cost of 5 or less. You thought Okiku was a menace back in OP01? Now green decks can play her on their first turn if they go second. How scary is that? That means she'll get a turn to attack before your enemy has Dawn for Jet Pistol. The only thing she's susceptible to is a Kobe, so watch out for that if you're playing against black. Her ability to rest enemy characters up to a cost of 5 allows you to dominate the early game and establish board control. And she's a great target for Odin's on KO ability as well. Next is 4 OP02 Yamato. 4 cost, 6000 power, 0 counter. Her card reads, this card's name is also treated as Kozuki Odin. On play, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less. Imagine OP01 Nekomamushi, but can reach up to 6 cost cards and comes with a beefy stat line as well. That's Yamato. She's already Dawn efficient through her stat line, but her ability to rest on play is invaluable for controlling the early game and preventing your enemy from setting up any shenanigans. Yamato and Okiku are your bread and butter for early game plays. Next is 3 OP01 X Drake. 5 cost, 6000 power, 1k counter. His card reads, on play, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. With the abundance of tap effects that can hit 4 cost characters in Okiku, Yamato, and Izo, X Drake gives you a lot of value by being removal that comes with a 6000 power body. With Kinemon's discount on Yamato, you can play both Yamato and X Drake for 8 Dawn for a late game swing of power. He's also our only source of hard removal in the deck. Next is 2 starter deck Eustace Captain Kid. 7 cost, 7000 power, 0 counter. His card reads, Blocker. Dawn times 1, end of your turn, set this card as active. I know there's a lot of contention over this card. Some people hate 7 cost Kid, some people love him. I'm in the camp that thinks he's good. He's really useful versus the Mirror, versus Law, versus Kaido, and Whitebeard. Being a free safe attack every turn really puts the pressure onto decks that like to turtle up. If I see 2 turtles fighting and one is carrying a knife while the other just has a bigger shell, I'd bet on the turtle with a knife every time. Next is 1 OP01 Eustace Captain Kid. 8 cost, 8000 power, 0 counter. His card reads, Dawn times 1, opponent's turn. If this character is rested, your opponent cannot attack anything other than characters named Eustace Captain Kid. Activate main, once per turn. You may rest this character. Play up to 1 character card with a cost of 3 or less from your hand. He's fallen from grace since OP01, but I like to keep him as a one-of that's searchable by Bonney, if I really need him. He's still amazing at what he does, turning your leader into an 8k body. If you can get him to stick, you'll start to snowball in value for every turn that he's still alive. He's useful even to buy yourself one more turn in the late game for you to finish your opponent the turn after. There's a lot more ways to deal with him now in OP02, but that just means he went from broken to balanced. One really cool interaction with Kinemon is that you can actually reduce the cost of a Yamato in hand to 3, and then play her with 8 cost Kid's activate main ability. Next is 4 OP02 Kozuki Odin. 8 cost, 8000 power, 0 counter. His card reads, activate main, once per turn. For 3 Dawn, set this character as active. On KO, play up to 1 Wano Country type character card with a cost of 3 from your deck. Then, shuffle your deck. Basically the Kid leader in a character card with an 8k body. That's an 8k minimum double swing, and you don't even have to trash a card to do it. With 12 small blockers in the deck, you'll be able to double attack to your heart's content. And the cherry on top is that even if they manage to kill him, he replaces himself with any 3 cost Wano card in your deck. Bringing out an Okiku can help set you up for lethal the turn after, since she can tap any blockers they play after killing Odin. For events, we're running 2 Paradise Waterfall, 1 cost. The card reads, counter. Your leader or up to one of your characters gains plus 2000 power during this turn. Then set up to one of your characters as active. Trigger. KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. It's another good card for establishing early dominance. Your opponent only has so much Dawn to work with in the early game, so saving an Okiku or Yamato and untapping them to secure their safety for one more turn lets them pump out even more value for you to really pull ahead of your opponent. We're also running 2 Punk Gibson, 2 costs. The card reads, counter. Your leader or up to one of your characters gains plus 4000 power during this battle. Then rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. Trigger. Rest up to one of your opponent's characters. Punk Gibson is useful in that it's a good defensive tool, but can also be used offensively. Expansion. With the release of a second expansion, every color also got more access to cheap blockers. A well-timed Punk Gibson in the late game could open the path up to lethal. It can even save you from a loss by allowing you to counter over one attack and then tapping another attacker before they can act. Unlike Red Hawk, your opponent can't increase the cost of their cards out of Punk Gibson's range, so you can really catch them off guard if they're not prepared for it. You might be asking, no Basil Hawkins? That's correct. I'm not running any Hawkins at all. I actually see a lot of lists running him, and I even faced a lot of other Kinemons that ran Basil Hawkins. I don't understand this card choice. It feels like everything and their moms can deal with Hawkins in OP02. We have Jet Pistol, we have Gordon plus Vista, we have Tsuru plus Kobe, Sakazuki, 7-cost Doflamingo, and Mihawk all deal with him. In the mirror, he's so easily controlled by Okiku and Yamato. Am I missing something? If you need a good double attacker, Odin already fulfills that role, and he can do it to the enemy leader as well, unlike Hawkins. For starting hands, these are the cards you'll want to look out for. If you're going second, try to get an Okiku in your opening hand. Either Okiku or Yamato is good if you're going first. As long as you have either searcher, you can draw into your late game cards later. Drawing into another searcher is also a good option, as your opponent will have to waste resources to get rid of your first searcher, and then you can just play your second searcher to dig for your Odins or Kids on a later turn. For matchups, I would concentrate more on the type of deck you're playing against rather than any leader-specific advice. Against any matchup, establishing Okiku and Yamato early is key. Against aggro decks, you want to concentrate on controlling their board and preventing any possible vectors of attacks. Your Okikus, Yamatos, Izos, and X-Strix become especially important here. 8-cost Kid is still as good at stopping aggression cold in its feet as it's always been. Against slower defensive decks, 7-cost Kid and Odin are your wall-busting tools. Free 8k attacks from Kid every turn will eventually put cracks into any defense, and Odin's double attacks can really knock it all down. I also can't recall losing any game against the Law with the 7-cost Kid out. Against mid-range decks, or the mirror, this is when utilizing blockers or cards like Paradise Waterfall and Punk Gibson can pull you ahead of the value race. You'll want to be looking out for opportunities to get that one favorable trade that they weren't expecting. The only specific advice I have is to be careful with using 7-cost Kid against blue decks, since they run Doflamingo and Mihawk. But we also have 4 Odin and 1 8-cost Kid that they can't touch with any of their removal. So prioritize your 8-cost cards and play 7-cost Kid as more of a win more card if you have nothing else to play. Pre-release events are happening right now, and the set will be out within the next few days. I'll actually be out of the country right before set 2 hits. Worst timing ever, I know, but I'll be sure to think of a video to do with the boxes I pre-ordered when I get back. Stay tuned for now. So I hope this video helps you jumpstart your own Kinemon decks, and gets you started on your path to becoming a Kinemon master. Okay, bye.
Car D Kaizoku.